In 40k, there is the normal universe, and of course the emotional underverse, the sea of souls, the warp, a reflection of the tumult of emotions running through those in the 40k galaxy. But what about other dimensions outside of that? From a lens that lets you see other slivers of reality that could have been, a place of anti-motion brought about by a scientist out of time and the necron collector, to the place the necron flayers journey through, to a failed crusade with dimension-hopping xenos. Let's explore these other dimensions. Let's begin. The Blue Boys, the Ultramarines, return to the Pharos and discover one of its effects from the great work of Belisarius' Call. "Come away," said Alpha Primus. He joined them. "Do not look. Is it an image?" said Dalus. "Is it a trick?" Felix noted then that there was no Alpha Primus on the far side. He peered around and saw there were more Space Marines in his stead, stood in guard around Call. They were all in grey armour and numbered 20 in total. "It is a dimensional mirror," said Alpha Primus. "We see a representation of reality as it might have been, had fate taken another course." 3 of the grey-armoured Primaris Marines left their master and approached. They seemed to be arguing. A 4th came, then a 5th, and around the fists and heads of these last 2, nimbuses of psychic power ignited. Felix saw other differences. There was no Ixen in the image. Another warrior stood exactly where Ixen was, and his heraldry was not of the Aquilonian Brotherhood. Gethane wore a normal battle brother's war gear. Truncus lacked his Martian red and silver harness, and wore apothecary's white, while Felix saw belatedly that the hand his other self rested on was a shining augmetic. "Look away," said Alpha Primus. "I can feel agitation. Step back and the vision will fade." "You know this because of Call," said Cominus, who turned away. Primus nodded. "Call teaches me many things. He made me for these eventualities." He drew in a sharp, pained breath. "Quickly, we peer through the barriers not meant to be breached." Then we turned to the Black Templars. "It is not the warp," said Gethane, fascinated. A Black Templar notices the room is too large for how it looks from the outside, and later things that defied categorization shimmered into being, intersecting layers of impossible shadows that flowed into one another in a manner that hurt the human mind. They were undeniably sentient and hostile. They writhed through the air, anticipating the track of bolt rounds and slipping around them. Kiernov's men let out battle cries and concentrated their efforts. For the duration of an eye blink, they took an unrecognizable form, humanoid creatures of pure shadow whose skins writhed with glowing marks, curved blades descended, dragging trails of condensing hydrogen fog after them. Once, twice, the crack of ceremony being breached cut through the sound of guns. 2 brothers fell, one dead, the other clutching at his neck. The creatures slipped out of existence, all indication of their presence abruptly vanishing. One Black Templar explains that the warp is separate to their plane. The universe we exhibit comprises 4 dimensions: height, width, depth, and time. These creatures are perhaps natives of more. There are more dimensions than the 4 in our own field of existence. It is through these that entrance to the warp is effected. These new forms of the Scythor are as real as you or I, but possess further dimensionality to them that makes them difficult for us to perceive. Perhaps these beasts are of that sort. They invade our existence to birth their foul progeny, periodically then depart. Now we look to the Necrons and the place that the flayed pass through, the Ghost Wind. A ship, the Acrox, passes into it. You will know, of course, that we have long been able to confound lesser species by operating in layers of reality below the observable. By use of the dimensional intricacies, well, my fellows and I established, after much labour, access to layers of meta-reality below even those, and we found the bottom, a place where concepts entirely separate in high dimensions boiled down to a universal abstract, which was at once both everything and nothing. Mentep and others worked on using this basal layer as a substrata for consciousness itself. This indeed was the basis for my prototype evocatory medium, and yours that followed it. Kurtaik left for Doat, a world far from the war, to pursue the most noble of goals, but alas, perhaps this substrata for consciousness is linked to how the flayed move. intuitively linking to this other realm. The Ghost Wind, as its name implies, is analogous to the Ghost Walk mantle, which a cryptech, which is someone who specialises in technology, called Dagon used, all designed on a much grander scale, indeed for fleet use, but it is a simple protocol which its bearer can cast, requiring no physical component. The ship moves there, no stars can be seen. Necron sensors also picked up nothing, which they never do in real space where there is always something. No gravity wells or quantum turbulences. Here, the hull temporarily was near absolute zero in its temperature, no matter at all. The Necron ships, for their advanced tech, had to use radio waves to communicate. This is the place the flayed Necrons move through. Now lastly, we turn to Cadia. Here Trajan and Cole are trying to close the Great Rift and open up a hole to another dimension. Just looking back at my script here, when I said they're trying to close the Great Rift, I of course meant the Eye of Terror near Cadia. Snaps of arc lightning, black as the unstarred void, lashed between the bases of the pylons, throwing sparks of dark matter where they connected to other noctilith. Those that looked too closely at the strike saw that there were no electrical charges but micro fissures in the air and stone, through which an elsewhere place could briefly be seen. To call it a dimension would be incorrect. The warp was a dimension, a mirror world of psychic reality, where the twisted spawn of emotion and concepts played out their own mad lives. This was, if anything, the opposite of that. A place of unlife, soulless emptiness, that was vast and tangible, yet did not exist in the common way of meaning at all. It was defined by what could not exist there, and what could not exist there was anything. The black streams of anti-galaxies sparked and crawled up the pylons, up out of the cavern, and into the Elysian fields to coalesce at the pylons' tips. So from afar they appeared like a field of sorcerous grave candles. The daughter of Abaddon, a construct to control his Blackstone fortress, regained her feet and wiped the foam from her mouth. She saw that it had lanced the Eye of Terror like a boil, bursting the convex skin of the dimensional tear, so it collapsed in on itself, and to her horror she saw that the great eye, open since humanity had first looked into the skies of terror and imagined gods in the stars, was starting to close. Cole sees and says to Trajan, "It's working, you abominable, filthy genius. We've done it, we've..." And he sees the demons were dissolving, vanishing in gouts of blue flame, as they fled back to the Immaterium. This effort is sadly spoiled by Abaddon dropping a Blackstone fortress onto Cadia. I wonder if that place they tapped into was also the Flay dimension, where there's very much a limit on certain aspects. So those are some of the dimensions outside of the warp and the webway that exist in 40k. Clearly there are layers to this, and lots of places where you can play dimensional hide and seek. Are there any you would like to have seen mentioned in the video? Let me know. And if you like the video on the Necrons, try this one.